Ms. DeAndrea Walker, Acting Director of the Department of Public Works and Transportation.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the council. We'll start today with, oh, was I supposed to wait for you to introduce me? I'm sorry.
No, go right ahead. We already did it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. You want a better introduction?
No.
And now the most amazing, the most incredible, the most professional, the most dedicated
No.
Director of Public Works ever, Ms. DeAndrea Walker.
I'm sorry.
That's funny.
You're completely off. I'm sorry. Okay. So the administration is requesting a supplemental appropriation of private funds from the Recycling Partnership totaling $350,000 to the Recycling Partnership Grant Agreement Gifts and Grants Fund Program. These funds will be used towards the cost of installing a polypropylene plastic recycling sorting equipment at our Central Acceptance Facility. This machine is needed because humans are unable to visually identify polypropylene on the sorting line. So the plastics that go through the line unsorted and into the contaminant go into the contamination bunker for landfilling. Back in March, we performed a material sort at our facility, and we found that on average 436 pounds per hour of polypropylene could be recovered. If we were able to use this machine, we could realize annual revenues totaling $232,000 after the installation of this sorting equipment. If we are successful in receiving this grant, we will attain a bid totaling $824,500 to furnish and install the equipment from the contractor that provided the existing single stream recycling system. The procurement phase will begin following council approval, and the completion of the installation is anticipated to be approximately 1 year. This project, of course, will be funded using the proposed $350,000 grant, as well as $475,000 in county funds. Our grant period will commence upon council approval and will continue for 5 years. I'll take any questions.
Any questions or comments from the member? Hearing none, thank you, Ms. Walker. You can move right on to page 6. On-call traffic engineering.
The administration is requesting approval of 2 contracts, one with JMT and the Wilson T. Ballard Company, to provide on-call traffic engineering services for various projects throughout the county. JMT will perform services for what we call our Tier 2 projects, where the cost exceeds $10,000. And the Wilson T. Ballard Company will provide services for our Tier 1 projects, where the cost is $10,000 or less. The contracts do not specify a maximum compensation for the initial 3-year term. Compensation for both contractors combined may not exceed $1 million for the entire 5-year term, including the renewals. Just as background, the contractors will provide on-call traffic engineer services that include things like traffic signal design, traffic plans, and various other traffic-related studies throughout the county. There was a 20% MWBE participation requirement associated with this contract as well. With that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Any questions or comments from the member? Thank you. Now we move on to page 10. Rummel, Flepper, and Hall LLP. Bridge inspection.
Okay. The administration is requesting approval of 2 contracts to provide on-call inspection services for the county's minor bridges and other structures. The 2 contractors are Rimmel, Kimball and K, RK&K, known to the industry, and Wallace Montgomery and Associates. Each contract commenced upon council approval, continues for 2 years, and will renew for 2 additional 1-year periods. Compensation for each contractor may not exceed 1.8 million for the entire term. Just as background, federal law requires highway bridges 20 feet or more in length to be inspected every 2 years. Those bridges that are 20 feet or more are inspected by the state. However, the county uses the same standards for inspecting our roadways and bridges that span less than 20 feet and that carry pedestrians. So this contract is so that we can have those inspections done on our biannual cycle. I'll take any questions.
Any questions or comments from the member?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilman Pope.
Yes, I'm going to recuse myself from any discussion or vote on this issue. My wife is employed by one of the firms that are listed.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments from the member? Okay, thank you. Ms. Walker, we'll move on to the on-call portable water pipeline design services.
The administration is requesting approval of 2 contracts to provide on-call portable water pipeline design services for various Tier 2 projects throughout Baltimore Metropolitan Water System. Tier 2 services are for projects with costs that exceed $300,000. The 2 contractors are Wilson T. Ballard and JMT. Each contract commences upon council approval and continues for 4 years and will renew for an additional 2-year periods. The services that this contract specifically provide are pipeline design, trenchless construction design, permitting, environmental surveys and studies, restoration of landscaping plans, and things of that sort. This contract also had a 20% MWBE participation requirement, and we had 13 submittals for this contract specifically. I'll take any questions that you may have.
Any questions or comments? Thank you, Ms. Walker. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to Mr. Lawrence Richardson. Moving to page 18.
Good afternoon, Chairman Jones, member of the council. The administration is requesting approval for 2 contracts, one with Honor Own and another with Prologue, to provide wellness and recovery services for Baltimore County adults 18 and older. The funding for these services is available through a grant from the Maryland Department of Health, Behavioral Health Administration. The county selected the 2 vendors to operate the wellness and recovery programs. Prologue will operate the existing location in Northwest Baltimore County, and Honor Own will operate an existing location in Southwest, Northeast, and Southeast Baltimore County. Residents from all over the county can attend at any of these locations. The initial term of the agreement will commence upon council approval, and with 4 one-year renewals. It's anticipated that approximately 260 unduplicated adults will be served annually. The target population includes adults aged 18 and older who are in recovery or working towards recovery with a mental health disorder, who do not access traditional sources of care. Services are also will be available to all mental health customers within Baltimore County.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from the member? Okay, Mr. Richardson, the next item. So we're going to page 29 now.
And the next item is the administration is requesting approval for a contract with Honor Own to provide peer recovery community center in Dundalk. The recovery center will be located in the Dundalk community, 21222. The vendor will provide recovery support services to Baltimore County residents aged 18 and older who are voluntarily seeking recovery, or those who are already in early, mid, or late stage recovery. Recovery support services are non-clinical in nature and include, but are not limited to, peer mentoring, peer-led support groups informational classes, life skill sessions, and linkages to community services. The initial term of this agreement will begin upon council approval with 4 one-year renewals. It's also anticipated that the minimum number of people served will be 180 unduplicated adults annually. And the amount of the contract will not exceed $187,326 for this fiscal year. Total compensation for the 5 years will not exceed $936,630.
Very important service, well worth the money. Any questions or comments from the men? Using 1 or 2 libraries, well worth the money. How about we move on, Mr. Richardson, to mental health associations.
So the administration is requesting approval for a contract with the Mental Health Association of Maryland to provide senior peer partnership and education program. This is a program that offers support for residents over age 60 with late onset mental health diagnosis. The contract will commence upon council approval and will renew automatically for 4 additional one-year periods. The senior peer program and education program is to provide peer support services and education to adults over 60 years of age with mental health, with mental illness, and to maintain stability or mental vulnerable county residents. The contractor will recruit, train, and supervise 30 to 35 peer volunteers who will meet with individuals in their home, in a community setting, or virtually, as well as provide support over the telephone. We anticipate that this contractor will provide a minimum of 800 supportive home virtual visits annually and conduct 35 community workforce education group meetings annually with at least 600 individuals this coming year.
Again, well worth the money. Any questions or comments from the men? Okay, Mr. Richardson, I guess we'll move on to the Hope Health System.
So this as a contract, the administration is seeking approval for a contract with Hope Health Services to provide mental health services also for residents aged 60 years and older. This contract will commence upon council approval and will renew automatically for 4 one-year periods. The total compensation will not exceed $209,418. The contractor will operate a countywide coordinated and comprehensive community senior mental health outreach program. Services will include outreach, early intervention, assessment, ongoing individual psychotherapy, consultation and training for the Department of Aging, substance use disorder education, substance use prevention education, and early detection in community settings. Baltimore County Senior Centers and senior apartment programs and substance use prevention through public and professional education. Eligible individuals must be 60 years of age and willing and able to participate in treatment and meet one of the following criteria: have a relatively new onset mental illness and or co-occurring substance use issue, or a previously undiagnosed mental illness and have a history of mental health issues or treatment, but have not been able to participate in traditional services or be homebound and unable to attend a regular outpatient mental health clinic.
Any questions or comments from the men? Okay. Last but not least, Mr. Richard.
And this was the last contract we have. We're seeking approval for a contract with the Institute for Family-Centered Services, known as IFCS of Maryland, to provide diversion services for Baltimore County children, adolescents, and young adults with mental health diagnosis at risk of being placed in a higher level of care so that they can remain in their home and in the community. This contract will commence upon council approval and will renew automatically for 4 additional one-year periods. Total compensation for this year would not exceed $120,681, and the total compensation for the 5-year period will not exceed $603,405. The program will serve children, adolescents, and young adults. The contractor will provide diversion services for fee-for-service basis. It will be behavioral in-home intervention services provided in a community-based program to help prevent out-of-home placement, and behavioral mental health consultation services provided in a comprehensive assessment for young children with behavioral problems in a daycare setting. The target population obviously is children under the age of 18 who have a Medicaid and live in the county with a behavioral health diagnosis. We hope to serve up to 32 families annually.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. I think that's a very important program, and I'm sure it could help a lot of youth as well as the families who are really at their wits' end in many cases, trying to deal with children with some of those concerns. Any questions or comments from the member? Thank you very much, Mr. Richardson. And now I believe we have Mr. Leonard Howie. Page 43, a purchase order agreement, amendment.
Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Okay, this is the Light of Truth Recovery Support Training Institute contract, right?
Yes.
Okay, this 127, oh, I'm sorry, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the council.
Good afternoon, sir.
I'll do the reverse from what happened to my colleague. This $127,000 contract is with the Light of Truth Center Recovery Support Training Institute. It provides participants of the Support to Communities Fostering Opioid Recovery Through Workforce Development Grant with an opportunity to participate in peer recovery training. The Light of Truth Center is a certified training provider that meets the requirements and guidelines of the Maryland Addiction and Behavioral Health Professional Certification Board. The Institute will provide the training on site, customize the schedule to meet the department's needs, and help the participants secure locations to earn their 500 service hours, which is a key component of their recovery program. The cost per training cohort is about $9,000. We anticipate organizing 4 cohorts a year with up to 10 participants in each cohort. Light of Truth provided this training with our first opioid grant, and we did see positive outcomes for participants. The faculty members are professional facilitators, all with local experience, who have been providing educational and professional development training in Maryland from a range of 2 to 8 years. The term of the contract is through May 31st, 2024, which is the life of the Maryland Department of Labor grant.
Thank you very much, Mr. Howie. Any questions or comments from the member?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilwoman Better.
Good afternoon, Mr. Howie. How are you
Yep,
today?
I'm fine. Good afternoon, Councilmember.
So I just have a question. Where is the location? Is this a brick and mortar location somewhere in Baltimore where they're working out of, or is it in the Commission for Labor? I mean, I just don't understand. Is it already within programs, or
Yeah,
is this being ran out of? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the first grant, which we had already worked on, it's brick and mortar, just in the sense that many of the participants either went through HHS facilities or our job centers.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Well, it's good to hear that it's a successful program.
Correct. Yes, and
Good.
as we know, opioid addiction is quite a problem all around, but Baltimore County is no stranger to this unfortunate problem. So anytime we receive state funding to really support efforts to help people recover, we clearly want to take advantage of that to help out our citizens.
Sure, everybody deserves another chance for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Better. Director Howie, are there any questions or comments from the member? Okay, Director Howard, why don't we move right along to page 47? Support
that's-
for support of a conditional loan.
Okay, that's our resolution. In support of its efforts to construct a new 1.8 million square foot state-of-the-art distribution facility at Trade Point Atlantic, McCormick and Company has requested a $2 million conditional loan from the Maryland Department of Commerce. The total project cost of what they're doing down there at TPA is estimated at $300 million. Their facility is going to consolidate multiple warehouses and leverage advanced technology solutions to improve productivity and drive efficiencies enabled by automation. The company anticipates officially opening the facility by the second or third quarter of 2022. Now, a key term of the Department of Commerce conditional loan requires the county to provide a matching $200,000 conditional loan. This resolution supports the state's conditional loan, which is a requirement of the MEDAF loan program.
Thank you, Director Howard. McCormick has been a good corporate citizen in Baltimore County. They've employed quite a few people in Baltimore County, and they continue to make a positive impact in the county, especially in terms of employment. And so we want to be as supportive as we can. Are there any questions or comments from the member?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go right ahead, Councilman. Okay.
Mr. Howie, could you explain again the county's commitment related to the debt?
The county's commitment is we provide a 10% matching financing opportunity for in this case, the borrower. So because the state is offering $2 million conditional loan, we are required to match that at the 10% level. So we offer a $200,000 conditional loan.
Okay. Is that bond funding? Is that general obligation bond?
No, this
General fund?
this money comes out of our boost fund.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions or comments from the member? Thank you very much, Mr. Howard, and again, we want nothing but the best for McCormick.
Absolutely.
Glad they're still here. Glad they're here.
Absolutely. All right.
Once
Thank
upon
you.
a time, there was talk of moving. We said, no way. Not going anywhere. Staying right here in Baltimore County where you belong. Next, we move on to Councilman Marks. Thank you, Director Howard.
Thank you very much. This resolution would require evaluation by the design review panel for proposed projects in the northern part of the commercial revitalization district that basically stretches along the Bel Air Road corridor, the Rossville area. It's only the northern part, the part that's north of the Beltway. We've done this in other areas, and it I think helps ensure a degree of quality for new construction in those regions.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from the member? What do you have to speak? Hearing none, Ms. Castro, you want to speak?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. We have one speaker registered for this item, and it is Gloria Kelly. Ms. Kelly,
Yes,
you may begin your testimony. Are you there, Ms. Kelly? Ms. Kelly?
yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You may begin your testimony.
Good afternoon, council members. I was concerned about the procedure for petitioning a new MR zone. Section 240.4 of the county code. It says that there's supposed to be a site plan drawn up and a public hearing was supposed to be taking place. And Mr. Marks, I believe you sent me a site plan for the property at 4299 Fitch Avenue. However, I was not privy to that prior to the comprehensive zoning maps, nor any time before that, nor was there a public hearing. At your instruction, I had put in some zoning violations, which I thought were appropriate. And now that I see the site plan, all the zoning violations that were present are still present, and they are now part of the site plan. Could you clarify that for me, or tell me what I'm missing here?
Well, this has nothing to do with the piece of legislation we're considering today. Piece of legislation we're considering today has to do with requiring the design review panel to evaluate projects in the area of the Bel Air Road corridor that you live in, and you requested that I put this in. My understanding is that the whole issue of the site plan for the property on Fitch Avenue has been reviewed extensively by code enforcement and by the county executive's office. So.
Really? Well, there are certain things that have they changed the county code then in some way, shape, or form. I direct you to 253.4 for parking for Baltimore County. About the public hearing for new MR zone. This property, as you know, has been was downzoned in 2016 to a DR35 and continued to operate as ML up to the present time. There is no occupancy permit. There is no exception for construction and storage equipment. But according to the new site plan, everything that's in the county code happens to site plan happens to override those things in the county code. And, you know, for you to tell me that it's, you know, that it has been reviewed extensively, not true. Okay.
Ms. Kelly, let me respond. First of all, again, the bill has nothing to do with this. It's a prospective bill. The following agencies have met with you or talked with you and reviewed what you're talking about. I certainly have. The county executive staff have looked into it. Code enforcement has looked into this. The People's Council has looked into this. The Inspector General has looked into this. And they have listened to you and evaluated your concerns. And I don't want to speak for each of those agencies, but I think there's been some very robust conversations about what you've talked about. The bill has to do with evaluating future projects in the area that includes your residents, and you were the one who requested that I put this bill in.
Mr. Marks, I got one more issue, and it has really.
This is not an interrogation, Ms. Kelly. It has to do with a bill that's prospective, and as I said, numerous agencies and numerous individuals have reviewed your case.
Okay, can I ask you another question, please? And this has nothing to do with that. Okay, in 1997.
Ms. Kelly,
Yes.
Has nothing to do with the bill.
there's a time limit and it's just for testimony only. This is not a Q&A. If you could wrap up your comments before the council members, please.
Okay. I will just say that during this time of the site plan that was supposed to be collaborated with me and Mitch Kelman and Mr. Marks and Mr. Zimmerman, and the site plan was slipped under the rug. There was no public hearing. There was no collaboration. There was nothing. And now I'm left with a junkyard behind my house. And that's all I have to say. And thank you for listening.
Mr. Chairman, can I just have one final word here?
Yes, please.
You know, Ms. Kelly is correct. I did downzone the property because I was sensitive to the concerns she was bringing to my attention. And over the course of many years, I talked to Ms. Kelly, I talked to the property owner, and the property owner, yes, made improvements. Ms. Kelly has discussed this situation with the Inspector General, People's Council, Code Enforcement, County Executive Staff, myself. Numerous agencies in the county government, and candidly, I've tried to help her. And you know, It's one thing to express your opinion, which every citizen in this county has the right to do so. It's another to use a legislative hearing to just pose questions that have that's nothing germane to the bill at hand. I believe Ms. Kelly has been given full consideration by numerous agencies in the county government.
We'll move right along to Councilman Quirk.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we're talking about Resolution 137-21.
Yes, sir.
I'd ask Mr. Bostwick to give a brief overview of this, as I'm here to listen to the testimony on both sides, and also just want to say I'm very open to talking to the council members after the work session as well on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Quirk, Mr. Bostwick.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. This is a very interesting situation that the council finds itself part of. Normally, the council is really not involved in the development, review, and approval process, but in this instance, it is to a certain extent on a discrete issue. This matter stems from Resolution 137-21. And Mr. Lafferty is also on and will present the planning department / planning board's recommendation and then decision in the matter. But before we get to that, I'll just say a few quick things. It stems from the Davis Farms development plan hearing and the Davis Farms proposed development on Maple Lane or Maple Road, I believe, in Catonsville. The hearing was in February before the ALJ. The ALJ denied approval of the plan for, among other reasons, non-compliance with the master plan. However, that question should have actually gone to the planning board for its review and decision. And so eventually the ALJ did refer the case to the planning board. The planning board conducted, I believe, 2 meetings related to the issue, and also received a report from the planning department staff. The planning board the planning board accepted the recommendation of the planning staff that there was no conflict with the master plan in this proposed development plan, and voted to accept that, and then voted to essentially hold that or decide that there was no conflict with the master plan. That would be the end of it usually, and that would be binding upon the hearing officer when the hearing officer receives the case back. However, there is a provision in the county code that says that the decision of the planning board, in this case, that there is no master plan conflict, there is a provision in the county code that says that the planning board's decision is not binding on the hearing officer if overruled by the county council. And in my 10 plus almost 11 years with the county council, we've never had this type of item before you, but today we do. And so the resolution was crafted at Mr. Quirk's request to allow all the parties essentially to present their view of whether or not you should overrule the planning board's decision. And we did that by way of a resolution, and the resolution is crafted in the affirmative that if passed, the county council will be overruling the planning board's decision, and if the resolution fails, the council will not be overruling the planning board's decision. It was crafted that way not to favor any party. It just had to be done one way or the other. And so I think that's where we find ourselves. I'm sure if I've missed anything, Mr. Lafferty and the other persons who are testifying will fill in the gaps. Thank you. And again, I think Mr. Lafferty is here to present the planning department's recommendation and the planning board's decision.
So, went to the ALJ.
I can't hear you very well, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it went to the ALJ. They made a decision when they should have sent it back to the planning board.
Correct.
Then they sent it back to the planning board.
Yes.
Planning board said, no, that's not part of the master plan.
Well, the planning board, the ALJ denied approval of the plan for a number of reasons, one of which was non-compliance with the master plan. But when the ALJ, I guess in essence, invoked the master plan, that issue should have been referred to the planning board right then and there. But instead, the ALJ denied approval of the plan, and then the developer appealed that decision to the county's Board of Appeals, and the county Board of Appeals correctly realized that, hey, this should have actually been referred to the planning board for a decision on this master plan issue. So when it was remanded back to the ALJ then correctly referred that issue, the matter to the planning board to decide that master plan issue.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the member?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Let's go ahead, Councilman Cook.
Mr. Bostwick, and this may be a question for Mr. Lafferty. Was the planning board's decision consistent with the planning staff recommendation?
I think you're muted, Mr. Lafferty.
Sorry, Ms. Bostwick, thank you. Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you. I'd wait to hear the testimony.
Okay, Mr. Lafferty, we ready for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the County Council, as Mr. Bostwick has indicated, I'm here to address Council Resolution 137-21. Baltimore County Code has given you a pretty unique role in the development approval process. This resolution, as Mr. Bostwick said, would in fact allow the overruling of a planning board decision. There appears to be no precedent, and there appears to be no specific guidance for you as a decision-making body. But I would like to suggest a standard with this particular question. Did the planning board have sufficient information to determine that the proposed Davis Farms residential development does not present a conflict with the Master Plan 2020? And if so, is there any basis that the council would use to overrule the planning board's decision? So the development proposal went through the normal approval process, concept plan conference, development plan conference, and then the community input meeting before it went to the ALJ. The public participated at the community input meeting time as well as at the ALJ's hearing. And as planning always does, we did make comments in each of these stages about the master plan and found and indicated that there was no conflict. Now, we did not state that as a specific comment because we found that there was an absence of a conflict. If we found that there had been one, we would have stated so in our comments. The development of land in the county, as you know, must conform with the master plan. On page 12 of Judge Mayhew's order, he wrote that he did not believe the construction of 19 homes on Maple Avenue is consistent with the master plan's vision of the T2 residential and T3 suburban transects that are applicable to this tract. And I'll talk about the transects in a minute. And then again on page 18, he stated that the development plan does not comply with the master plan vision of these transects and makes reference to the fact that the sides of the various properties are between 0.27 acres and 0.63 acres. His references to the master plan indicated that the transects were the reasons for his finding that there was a conflict. Now, Judge Mayhew also pointed out a number of other development-related issues. These are issues related to the development regulations as a basis for denying Davis Farms project. However, those reasons, which include school capacity, proximity to the floodplain, sewer capacity, are development regulations and not relevant to your decision about the master plan. These are regulatory standards that are applied by the agencies, which again, Judge Mayhew referenced. And as Mr. Bostwick has pointed out, it's really not the merits of the development plan that's to be considered or reviewed today. Real briefly, Davis Farms' proposal is to develop 21.17 acres of land in Catonsville with one existing and 18 new single-family detached homes. The surrounding community or the adjacent homes on Maple are also single-family detached. This site has 5 zoning classifications: DR1, DR2, DR35, RC5, and RC8. All of the proposed development is to be located on the DR zone portions of the property. Therefore, 19 homes or houses are being proposed for a little over 16 acres of DR zone land. The development proposal only used the density of those DR zones and not those from the RC zones either. So Master Plan 2020 was issued, as you know, a decade ago in 2010. And at that time, they adopted a land use map that utilized what's referred to as a transect model in order to describe the intensity of the development ranging from the rural parts of the county to the most urban parts of the county, but without identifying specific land use for specific parcels, because this is not a zoning map. This is a general conceptual map that reflects land use patterns and supports the land use objectives without going to the level of a parcel. These objectives were laid out in the master plan. So the transects really were to recognize there's a variety of, I don't know, needs, interests, preferences for residential living from the rural and more sparsely parts outside the URL to the more dense, compact areas, neighborhoods like you may find around Towson or in parts of Pikesville. Proposed land use map reflects these variations. And it really is to give general direction for the county's land use decision. So the 2 transect designations that were described and really applicable for this location for the Davis Farms development are T2R, which means rural residential zone. And it consists of large lots, single-family detached housing. Often the houses are set back generally 50 feet. It could have 2 to 5 acres per dwelling and could accommodate a large yard. They're sparsely settled lands, could be farmlands, could include woodlands. Whereas the T3 includes lower density residential adjacent to higher zones that contains mixed use, maybe next to or outside of Catonsville, for instance. The T3 transect does include lawns and landscape yards around single family homes with variable side yards and front yards, but low density is not defined. One of the documents that I submitted was a map that shows the land management area. And if you have that nearby, what it shows is the development itself is outlined in yellow. The actual lots are also outlined in yellow. There are 5 zoning classifications as I said, DR1, 2, 3, 5, RC5, and RC8 and C. And it also shows the transects. And one thing that's clear with the transects is that they coincide with the actual zoning boundaries. They have the same boundaries. So as Mr. Bostwick said, after the ALJ referred this matter to the board, planning staff generated a report on August 23rd and submitted it or provided it then to the planning board members as well as to the council for the developer, for those protestants, and to People's Council. The department recommended that the board find that there was no master plan conflict and that Davis Farms development could be approved. The staff basically restated what it had said at the concept plan conference and the development plan conference. And staff did not believe a conflict existed, so therefore did not raise the issue. So when the master plan proposed land use map was created, it actually made the zoning and the transects coincide in this part of the county. And that's what the map I shared with you will show. And it's comprised of lawns and landscape yards around single family homes. Similarly, the T2 transect really describes primarily agricultural land or woodland and wetlands with scattered buildings. The T2R transect on this site does not create a master plan conflict because there's no development on that. And there's no development either on that portion that's T2, and there was no density taken from that portion of the property to allow the number of units to be built. So after the report was generated, the board first met on September 2nd and received comments from planning staff as well as the attorneys for the developer, People's Council, and the protestants. And there were a number of residents from Maple Avenue who also spoke. At that time, one board member asked two questions. The first was, if the department does not believe it's a conflict, then why is the board considering the issue? And it was explained that it was referred by the ALJ for the board's decision. And then second question was the development inside the metropolitan district? And the board was told that it's inside the Erdl and also inside the metropolitan district boundaries. There were no other questions and no other discussion. The board then reconvened on October 7th to deliberate and vote. The motion that was given to them indicated that for reasons stated in the staff report and reports of the concept plan conference and development plan conference, the planning board's decision is that the proposed development of Davis Farms does not constitute a conflict with a master plan. No board members asked any questions, and there was no further discussion before the board voted favorably for the motion. So it was pretty clear on its face that the planning board relied upon the report from the planning staff in order to make its decision, but there was no conflict. It was the majority of the board. It was not unanimous, but clearly the majority agreed that planning boards, the report from planning staff, was sufficient to give them information to decide there was no master plan conflict. So as I said, the transects are a land use mapping tool to really provide general and conceptual guidance. And for Judge Mayhew to refer to the lack of consistency with the transect model obviously was not supported by the planning board. Certainly issues have been raised about the issue of density. As I indicated, it's not a defined term in the transect model. But I will point out that T3, while it calls for low density, on this particular property, where the lots range from 0.27 to 0.63 acres, 0.27 acres is slightly less than what would be allowed if you had a 3.5 zoning. And a DR2 lot could be a half acre, so a 0.63 acre parcel is actually between DR1 and DR2. So if you had 0.63 by itself, you could only build one lot. So that's as low density as we get. The staff evaluated these factors and looked at the zoning and the transects before they made its recommendation for approval, and acknowledged that it was inside the Earl as well as the Metropolitan District. So I'll just in conclusion say that, you know, the board heard the testimony, received written statements from the parties, and obviously we're not persuaded by the opposition. It had the staff report and the departmental reports. It was aware that the T2 transect was not part of the development itself, therefore could not be a conflict with the master plan, and that the densities that were proposed were sufficiently low to meet the master plan definition. So, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that there really is no basis for the council to overrule the decision, and would respectfully request on behalf of the planning board and the planning department that in fact you reject the resolution and allow the planning board's decision to stand.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Lafferty. Any questions or comments from the members?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilman Marks.
Yeah, Mr. Lafferty, do you recall the vote? What was the vote of the planning board?
It was 7-4.
7-4. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Yes. Hi. Do you recall the member of the planning board from Catonsville? How did that individual vote?
Repeat that again, please, Councilman.
The member from Catonsville, how did he vote?
The councilman, the planning board member from District 1 voted in favor.
Yes. In favor. Okay. Thank you.
Quick question, if I could.
Yes, Councilman
Chairman.
Burke.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lafferty. Appreciate the, very good detail and presentation. 7-4, so that's definitely not unanimous. I'm clear some difference of opinion even on the board. The 4 that opposed this decision, did they give any reasoning or any written statement on why they voted in opposition?
No, sir.
That it, Councilman Burke?
Yep. No, appreciate the testimony.
Any additional questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Lafferty. And I guess you'll hang around as we hear.
I have one more question, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
Councilman Mark.
So Mr. Lafferty, there's 15, 16 members of the planning board, correct?
Yes, 15.
15 members and 11 voted and 4 did not vote or were absent. Do you know?
They were absent.
They were absent,
sir. Yes, sir.
So there was no abstentions.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Lafferty, you see this as a slam dunk?
I think there's always room for interpretation, Mr. Chairman, but I do believe in this case that there was adequate information for the planning board to make its decision, and the planning staff had carefully reviewed the proposals before they went forward, and found no conflict. So I think it's pretty clear in this case.
Well, let's hear from you wanted to say something, Mr. Benjamin? I saw you pop up there. Or, I want to hear from the people that are been waiting patiently to testify.
Mr. Chair, I just have one quick question.
Yes.
It's just so I fully understand. So the ALJ was not supposed to rule on whether it was, why did the ALJ make a ruling if the ALJ was not, why didn't he refer it back rather than make a ruling? Was he mistaken?
Do you want me to take this one, Mr. Lafferty, or do you want to take it?
Feel free to, Mr. Bostwick.
Okay. Mr. Patoka, Councilman Patoka, there's a statute in the development article that states that certain issues should be referred to the planning board, and one of those issues is when there is an allegation or an assertion of a master plan conflict. So when the ALJ did in his order address an issue of non-compliance with the master plan, rather than sort of taking the next step and denying the plan in part on that basis, the ALJ should have referred that question or that issue to the planning board, and eventually that was done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Absent any other questions or comments, Ms. Del Castro, let's get to your first speaker.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our first speaker is Howard Alderman. Before I start calling on the speakers, I just want to remind those who have registered to testify, there is a time limit of 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes to give your testimony. And let me call on Mr. Alderman. Mr. Alderman?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the council, and other participants. I'm representing the owners of the subject property. At the outset, I'm going to urge you to vote no on Resolution 13721. I have a prepared presentation, but I think it's important that I address some of the questions asked by members of the council. Mr. Patoka, you asked about, or Councilman Patoka, you asked about the ALJ and the master, should he have referred it? The council should understand that at no time from the time of the pre-concept plan through and including the conclusion of the hearing, after the hearing was over, at no time did anyone ever mention a conflict with the master plan. This is something after conclusion of the hearing, with no testimony or evidence on the issue, the ALJ wrote into his order. That's why I appealed it, because if he had found it, if he thought there was a master plan conflict and he thought he could justify it, it should have been referred to the planning board. He didn't do it. I took it to the Board of Appeals and the board said, no, if there's a master plan conflict, it's up to the board to make the decision. Let me just see. You should also note that because of the various zones, DR zones in which development was proposed, we filed a zoning petition, and we asked the ALJ to determine that the number of homes built in each of the different classifications was consistent with that allowed by the zoning of that portion of the property. That petition was approved, even though the development plan was denied. That the zoning commissioner, or the ALJ, said yes, the allocation of density is consistent with the Baltimore County zoning regulations. I've submitted a written outline of the relevant issues presented in this case, and also a summary, and I would ask that you take a look at it. Mr. Bostwick stated this is sort of precedential. This issue presented is not just about the Davis Farms development plan. Your decision on this resolution will have precedential effect in each councilmanic district in the future. You heard that the master plan was adopted in 2010 from Mr. Lafferty. The zoning on the subject property was considered during the 2012, 2016, and 2020 CZMP processes. And as you know, the council is required by charter to keep or to place zoning on property consistent with the master plan. Now, as to the alleged conflicts, one of the conflicts was the community was not provided with an integral role in a development review process as required by the master plan. And I don't know whether the ALJ was familiar with the prior county review group process, which I think predated most of you on the council, where citizens and neighbors saw the plan for the development for the first time at the final hearing. The current process involved this community, as Mr. Lafferty said, all the way through. Concept plan conference, community input meeting, development plan conference, and ultimately the hearing officer's hearing. They were involved throughout the process. Also, the ALJ applied, you've heard about the T3 transect area. In the master plan, as part of the master plan, there is a proposed land use map. Now, the master plan is mandatory, just like the zoning regulations and the development regulations. However, the ALJ's ruling is completely contrary to the mandate of the master plan. The master plan states clearly that the land use map is a guide.
Mr. Alderman, you're over your
Ms.
3
Del
minutes.
Castro, Ms. Del Castro.
Yes, sir.
Let him finish, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank-
Go right ahead,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Alderman.
thank you.
May I continue or?
Yes.
No,
please.
I won't be long. The master plan says that the land use map is not to be applied to identified land use of any individual property. That's a mandatory precept of the master plan. Again, we know that the planning staff, the planning department, and the planning board found no conflict. If this resolution is approved, these will be used to challenge the use of individual lands in every development proceeding in direct contravention of the master plan. And I don't know how it's going to affect your review during the comprehensive zoning map process. Please review our written submission, including a summary. The community has alleged potential issues regarding development, flooding. Of course, this property is topographically on the low side of the community. School buses. You appoint a planning director and expect him to assign knowledgeable planners. You appoint members of the planning board. We're asking you tonight to rely on the professionals you have appointed and vote no on this resolution. Thank you, and thank you for the additional time.
Thank you, Mr. Alderman. Just stand by, please. Don't go anywhere. Councilman Quirk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm curious, for a question actually for Mr. Benjamin. Mr. Benjamin, do you have anything that you would like to state, or do you have any thoughts on anything you've heard so far, being our legal counsel for the county?
One thing I would ask that the council consider, because you're talking about, in essence, the planning board or an agency, I think that the decision of the agency should be given significant deference by this body, since you are currently doing a review of their decision. So I think it's important to keep in mind that the council's judgment should not be substituted for the planning board's. So I think it's important to look at the, I guess, a standard that the council is going to use in order to review this decision. So I wanted just to make sure that the council was aware of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Is that it, Mr. Alderman?
Yes, thank you. Unless any members of the council have questions.
Any questions for Mr. Alderman? We'll give him, we gave you additional time, Mr. Alderman, since you represent the owner of property, and certainly your opinion to matter somewhat here. Any questions or comments?
All right. Thank you, and happy holidays to all.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker, Ms. Del Castro.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our next speaker is Michael McCann. Mr. McCann?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Jones, members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I represent the folks who actually live on Maple Avenue. And I think you'll hear from some of them this evening, and they'll tell you what they believe the impacts of this development will be on their small, intact, and in my opinion, very unique community. I wanted, of course, limit my comments to the master plan, but a couple things I wanted to mention first, and maybe start off with the more complicated issue. Mr. Lafferty indicated, and I think Mr. Benjamin indicated the same, that in Mr. Lafferty's terms, that the standard that the council should apply in reviewing this issue is whether or not the planning board had sufficient information to make its decision. And in my opinion, that sounds a bit like an indication that the council is sitting in some sort of appellate capacity and reviewing the decision as to whether it was clearly erroneous. I know not everybody on the council is an attorney, but that's the way it sounds to me. I think, with all due respect to Mr. Lafferty, and since this issue really hasn't been decided, I think all suggestions from the code and otherwise are that this council should look at this issue anew. That is, it should look at on its own. The council is just as capable of reviewing the master plan as anyone else is, and determine on its own whether or not there is a conflict or not. So I think in the absence of any standard in the code, and there isn't any, I think Mr. Boss would agree with that, I think the council should look at this anew. But that said, I think we all know that Mr. Lafferty brings a great deal of experience to the table. His opinion should certainly carry some weight to the council. So I don't dispute that in any respect. The other thing I want to address first, Mr. Alderman mentioned that this issue, and he's mentioned this a lot, that this issue was never raised during the community input meeting or throughout the entire development review process until Judge Mayhew rather raised it. And I don't necessarily dispute that. I didn't represent these folks before the ALJ. They did a wonderful job, frankly, of expressing their concerns. And no one really raised it. I do this type of stuff every day, and I'm always amazed that the master plan isn't raised more often. I raise it whenever I do perceive an issue. But my point is the fact, as Mr. Alderman states, that the issue was never raised. I don't think that really has much relevance to the issue before you. It doesn't really matter whether or not the ALJ did it on his own or not. He found a conflict. The issue presented for the council anew, as I would suggest, is whether there is a conflict. And in that regard, I think the good news, in my opinion, is that this doesn't require a whole lot of heavy lifting by the county council. I think you can sit down and look at this master plan, and clearly, it does not conform. And I sent a letter into the members of the council that address a whole bunch of provisions that we rely upon, but dealing just with the transect issue. Let's just start with that, and that's what Mr. Lafferty addressed. Two points real quick about the master plan. Number one, the master plan calls for low density in this particular transect. I don't think under any reasonable interpretation that this development is low density. We can look at the lot sizes. The lot sizes range from 0.27 to 0.63 acres. The existing neighborhood, the folks that are going to have this development in the neighborhood, if it's approved, their lots are as large as 6 acres and have an average size of 1 acre. So far less dense than the proposed development. In fact, 39 of the existing 40 lots, 40 homes on Maple Avenue, are larger than the smallest proposed lot, and 19 of the existing lots are larger than the largest proposed lot. And I think perhaps maybe the most telling example of how this is not low density is the fact that adding 19 homes to this small, intact neighborhood would increase the density or the amount of homes by more than 40%. And that's a significant increase in density, and not just with respect to the site itself, but in the development as a whole. And secondly, and then I'll wrap up here, the master plan. I'm sorry.
Take your time.
Okay. The master plan calls for large blocks with homes that have large and variable front and side yard setbacks. That's a quote. and also setbacks are relatively deep. The lots in this proposed development have the minimum 25-foot setback. In the existing neighborhood, 37 of the homes have setbacks between 30 and 135 feet. And there really is no comparison between the setbacks and the size of the blocks in this proposed development and then what is existing in the community today. So while we can argue about what constitutes low density, we can argue about what constitutes a large yard. I think in order to conform to the master plan, and keep in mind, contrary to popular belief, the master plan must be complied with. There is a provision in the county code that I think, frankly, a lot of people in the county aren't familiar with that says, quote, all development must conform to the master plan, end quote. In fact, there's a Court of Appeals decision issued in 2012 that said the Baltimore County Master Plan, unlike a lot of other plans, is not merely a guide or advisory in nature. It must be complied with. So I don't think you can look at the master plan, take that provision, that mandatory provision into consideration and say in the same breath that this is low density, that these homes do not have or do have large blocks and have large setbacks or relatively deep setbacks. So I certainly appreciate Mr. Lafferty's candor. I appreciate the good work that the planning office and the planning board engages in every day, but we just don't think, Mr. Chairman, that this is a close call. The master plan is important. We're spending a whole lot of resources and time as we speak in coming up with the next master plan. So it is critical that we apply it, and we apply it even-handedly in this case. And we just simply don't think that in this case, the master plan is being respected. So again, I'm happy to answer any questions. Appreciate the council's time.
Yes, stand by, Mr. McCain. Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
Yes, Councilman Quirk.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. McCann. A question for you. If all the density was used, not just the DR density, but the density including all the density allowed, instead of the 19 units, how many units could have been proposed?
The total number of density on the entire parcel, Councilman Quirk, is 23. They could have 23, but the important thing to keep in mind is that nearly half of this site, there's 21 acres, as Mr. Lafferty indicated, half of this site, so 9 or 10 acres, is completely unbuildable. There's a floodplain, there's a stream, there's forest buffer, there's a whole host of reasons. There's 22 specimen trees that the developer proposes taking down. So we're dealing, I agree with you, your point is well taken, Mr. Quirk, that if this were not a environmentally sensitive site, they could get 23 homes on here, and 19 homes doesn't sound like a whole lot. But I think it's important to take into consideration that nearly half of the site is simply not developable.
Okay, any additional questions or comments for Mr. McCain? Okay. Any closing remarks, sir? We thank you for your testimony.
I appreciate it.
Next speaker, Ms. Bill Castro.
Our next speaker, Mr. Chair, is Peter Zimmerman. Mr. Zimmerman? Mr. Zimmerman?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Zimmerman,
Oh,
we can hear
okay.
you. Mhm.
Sorry, I was having trouble getting in earlier. It's great to be here before the county council. And yes, as Mr. Bostwick pointed out, this is unusual that this issue's come to the council. We've had a few other master plan conflict cases in the past, but none of them, for whatever different reasons, have come before you. So this is in that sense groundbreaking. I'm going to try to be really concise. Maybe you give me a little leeway. I want to get right to the heart of why I disagree 100% with Mr. Lafferty, with the planning department's approach and the approval of that majority by the planning board, okay? We have been dealing for decades with the arguments by developers' lawyers especially, that the master plan has no meaning or impact relating to particular parcels, and that as long as the development is within the bounds of the zoning density or other the zoning parameters, then the master plan goes out the window, okay? That it's weak, it's a guide, it doesn't have any meaning. You could call it Swiss cheese, chopped liver, a paper tiger, okay? The heck with the master plan, okay? But that issue got resolved by the Maryland Court of Appeals in 2012, in a case which I argued, Baltimore County case. And the Court of Appeals said, yes, the master plan does have an impact. That had to do with a mansion in Kingsville where there was conflict with the master plan, even though there was no zoning issue, okay? So for whatever reason, the planning department has kind of carried forward this, the developer's approach for the last decade, apparently. I mean, the planning department was with us in the HNS development case in Kingsville, with a different staff and director at the time. But recently, the planning staff takes the approach of the developers' lawyers, basically. So if you take this approach, whatever standard you use, I don't care if you take a clearly erroneous standard or the council looks at it anew or has some middle discretion. If you go along with the planning board and the planning department, then the master plan is just out the window. But it's not supposed to be out the window. Okay, our office defends the master plan under the county charter. The county code says master plan conflicts get referred and reviewed. So it is important, it does have meaning. And the only way it has meaning is if you do the analysis and see whether there's conflict with the transects. And that brings me to Judge Mayhew, who also was appointed by you. And I don't know that we've ever had a better administrative law judge, and we've had some very, very good ones, but he's excellent. And he only refers, the only way you get the matter goes to the planning board is if he sees a conflict, which he did. The only reason he didn't immediately refer it, there were enough other reasons to deny the development plan, and he apparently thought it would be just as efficient to deny it at that point without taking the time of the planning board. But okay, we're here. So what I would say, and I've written an extensive letter which answers, I think, the questions that have been given. And you take a look at Mr. Judge Mayhew's half-page explanation, okay? It's excellent. You take a look at anything that was written by the planning department, they didn't lay a glove on his opinion, okay? They basically said the master plan doesn't count, okay? It's coincident. I mean, what kind of language is that? It goes along with the zoning. I mean, if the master plan is to mean anything, then you can't just say it has nothing to do with any parcels, okay? So as much as I respect Mr. Lafferty, who I've known for many years, and it's not a personal thing here, it's a question of the institutional approach. And I think the institutional approach for a while now has been basically to say the master plan doesn't matter. And that's symptomatic of what they did in this case. They did not address master plan conflict explicitly in their review originally. And then they've tried to catch up later and basically saying, oh, the master plan's coincident. But it's not coincident. It's not a paper tiger. And it's got to be taken seriously. And if it's taken as something that doesn't matter in this case, there'll never be there'll never be a master plan conflict determination if we take their approach. All right, I guess I've gone beyond this. I'm at the 3 minutes, am I?
Well, keep on going. Just don't filibuster us, but keep on going.
All right, I try to be concise. And, I'm comparing it. I couldn't help thinking of this case as I was watching the Ravens game the other night and looking at the replay review. So you've got the ruling on the field, and it only gets overturned if there's evidence that it's wrong. I would say,
Mr. Zimmerman, that was not a catch. That ball hit the ground.
right, there you go.
It hit the ground. We saw it.
Right.
I'm sorry.
So what I would suggest to you is the really legitimate, realistic ruling in this case was made by Judge Mayhew, and it's a ruling that should be confirmed. I don't think the planning department ever really got to making what I would call a ruling. They just said the master plan doesn't matter relating to particular parcels. It's almost like they didn't put themselves in the position of the line judge or the field judge to really view the play, because they held back because of their very restrictive approach to the master plan. So this, whatever standard one wants to use, there's a very clear right or wrong issue in this case. Does the master plan apply to, can it apply? Does it apply to particular properties based on these transect zones, or does it not? I mean, somebody's right and somebody's wrong. And our office is, remember, under the charter, we defend the master plan. And then the county code says master plan conflicts are issues. So what in the world are we doing here? Okay. If the planning department is correct, there's never a master plan conflict unless there's a zoning conflict, but that makes no sense at all. It just subjugates and really sinks and buries the master plan. And that's why our office is taking such a strong position in this case. And it's not that I have no respect for the planning office. I mean, their approach is the same as the developers' lawyers have been giving us for years. Unfortunately, we resolved it in the Maryland Court of Appeals. If you have the opportunity to look at that case, and we discussed it in my letter, it's at Maryland 425, Maryland 425, Maryland 436. It's available on Google. It's easy to read. And I think that resolves the issue. And for whatever reason, I don't think the planning department follows that case. So I think we have a really explicit and hardline legal issue here. And that's my take on the case. And that's why, and our office doesn't challenge many development cases, okay? We're not against development plans, generally speaking. We only get involved where we see a serious master plan conflict or zoning problem. And Judge Mayhew, brought it into view and illuminated it. And it's his job. If master plan conflict's always an issue, it's his job to check it out. And if he sees a master plan conflict, he's not supposed to just be quiet and say, oh, well, the planning department didn't mention it. That's part of his job, and he does a great job. And as I said, read his opinions, only half page on the master plan. Read what the planning department says and decide which one's right and which one's wrong. And that's my take on it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zimmerman.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Councilman Marks?
Yeah, that's me. Mr. Zimmerman, the case you're referring to was the Longfield Estates case, correct?
Correct.
That's the Langenfelder, Langenfelder.
Langenfelder Mansion. You drive up Route 1, Blair Road, just before you get to the Kingsville intersection, and you can see that mansion. And the issue was additional development around that mansion. Did that conflict with the master plan, even though the zoning was okay?
Yeah, I'm very, very familiar with that. Yep, thank you.
All right, thank you. I would like to hear the next speaker. However, I'm going to take this opportunity just to say, Mr. Lafferty, do you have anything you want to add here? I mean, there was a lot of comments made about the planning department. I'll give you an opportunity if you so choose. If not, that's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that. I'll try and restrain, frankly, the way I want to respond to Mr. Zimmerman. The fact that we did not comment on the master plan in this particular case was not because it's Swiss cheese or we throw it out the window. In fact, every time that we're looking at we're looking at a development project that comes before us, the master plan is one of the factors that is always taken into account. There are subsequent ones to the Davis Farms, which we have actually raised master plan conflict. And we will continue to do that when we see conflicts that exist. We were not relying upon the zoning, and the offhanded comment about coincidence about the transects and the zoning is quite relevant because it is the zoning that's going to guide the number of units that can be constructed in a particular location. And it is, in fact, consistent with the transect and not in contrast or contradiction to the transect, which is the point that was made. So it's really not an accurate statement that we ignore it. I can't speak to past directors or administrations and the way they may have evaluated master plan or its application, but certainly we do. As to some of the comments from Mr. McCann, and I certainly appreciate his perspective, there's compatibility with single family homes. The density issue, I believe I addressed in my initial comments regarding whether it was 0.63 or 0.27 acres and whether that is low density. The decision is not dependent upon the size of adjacent properties or adjacent lots. That's not a factor in either the master plan or in the development review. Single family homes are, that's the compatibility standard that is applied. So I'll just stop at that, Mr. Chairman, but I appreciate your giving me an opportunity to comment.
You're certainly welcome. Any questions, comments from the members? Ms. Del Castro, next speaker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next speaker is Christy Pat. Ms. Cat?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for the time to speak today. My name is Christy Katz. I live at 7 Maple Avenue. I prepared a statement, but first I'd just like to mention, I know Lafferty, said that maybe the sole master plan reason called out by the ALJ was the transect issue. But the ALJ also mentioned things like many stable neighborhoods should not be disturbed for additional development. And mentions the Baltimore County Public School Master Plan, just that talks about overcrowding and mentions infrastructure problems. These are all covered and talked about in the master plan. So I just wanted to get that out loud, that it's not just about transects, in my opinion. So a lot of what we've heard from everyone so far has to do with the transects and zonings and setbacks and a lot of the technical aspects. Everyone seems to be caught up in those minutia details and ignoring the very real issue that this development as a whole is not compatible with the existing neighborhood. Judge Mayhew recognized this, and we're hopeful that each of you will also come to the same realization as you take a closer look. Certainly the master plan was created to help guide smart land use decisions in our area to reduce and mitigate negative impacts on natural resources and the environment. This development is literally adjacent to a targeted environmental area, which is an area identified as a conservation priority by the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, on a street prone to flooding and stormwater damage in a time where extreme rainfall events are not rare anymore. We have doubts that 100-year floodplain and other antiquated environmental impact measures will help us when the stream has already been overwhelmed and washed out by flash flooding. It doesn't take a stormwater engineer to see that if the earth around the stream is now saturated with drainage from this new community, the drainage in our community will move slower. And then please consider that within walking distance of Maple Avenue is downtown Catonsville, which has been identified in the master plan as a community conservation area. Instead of approving this development, the county should be reserving sewer capacity for the type of community enhancements planned on Frederick Road as detailed in the master plan. We invite each of you to come walk down our street, see for yourself why we have concerns about our quality of life and resident safety. Living on a narrow dead-end road with heavy pedestrian traffic and no sidewalks, our kids walk the length of the street every day in the road to get to the bus stop, sandwiched in between two near failing intersections, and we're just sounding the alarm that this is a huge safety risk. We are the epitome of the existing stable neighborhood that would just be devastated by this development. The safety and livelihood of our residents should be paramount, and this plan would be detrimental to the existing neighborhood. Mr. Pierre Annunzi from Century Engineering stated in his memo to the planning board that the master plan policies and actions are not mandatory. If the master plan is not mandatory, what are we even doing here? How many thousands of dollars and hours have been spent gathering community input and writing the master plan? Why are entire departments and processes devoted to upholding the master plan and determining if a conflict exists? If it's not mandatory, then these departments, these processes, this very hearing is moot. When we went before the planning board, they asked 0 clarifying questions and engaged in 0 minutes of public discussion. During the vote, several members were in dissent and several members were absent or abstained. This may just be another item on their list, but this is our home. We deserve careful consideration and respectfully ask the council for due diligence in this matter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Katz. We appreciate it. Ms. Valcastro, next speaker, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our next speaker is Bruce Lehman. Mr. Lehman,
Yes.
you may begin.
I have images I'd like to share. Can I do that?
I'm sorry, it's not technically possible to share an image. I would have to, Mr. Chair, I would have to elevate this person to a panelist in order for them to share their screen.
I'm okay.
Okay. One moment, Mr. Lehman. Let me give you the capability to share your screen.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you should be a presenter. You may share your screen now.
Okay, this is the first time doing this, so there we go. Okay, good afternoon.
For us too.
We can't see your screen, Mr.
Yep.
You can't?
No, sir.
Now once you hit share, you also have to click share again on the box.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, what have I got to do?
So you just need to double click the images if that's what you want the council members to see. The files listed up, we can see the files listed on the side. So whatever you want the council members to view, you need to open up those files.
Okay, I just opened up a file and you still can't see it. It says I'm sharing. I've got a message that says you're sharing one application. I've got about 8 or 9 images to show you.
Okay.
Now we don't see any.
Well, one thing I can advise, Mr. Chairman, is that the council does have, or the council members did receive the emails, and the one submission from Mr. McCann had a number of photographs of the road and the surrounding area and some flooding issues and cracks along the road and things of that nature. I don't know if that helps Mr. Lehman in terms of what he wanted to present. Oh, there we go.
There
All
we
right.
go.
Have you got it now?
Yes, we do.
Okay, super. All right. My understanding is the master plan is was adopted to minimize the negative impact of development on existing neighborhoods. I'm addressing the impact of traffic and construction. This image here is for those on the council not familiar with the Maple Avenue neighborhood. The proposed Davis Farms project is shown in black here, and that's at the south end of Maple Avenue, which is a dead-end road. And Maple runs north up into Frederick Road where it has the intersection, and that is the only outlet from Maple Avenue out of the neighborhood. The intersection of Frederick and Maple and Dutton, Maple turns into Dutton on the other side of Frederick, lies in the, excuse me, in a half-mile section of road that is between North and South Rolling Roads. So this section, a half-mile section of road, has the combined traffic of Rolling Road, Frederick Road, and South Rolling Road. So they all come together in that 1/2 mile section. Do you see this video I just brought up?
No.
Share.
Give it a minute. There you go.
Okay. This is at the corner of Maple Avenue and Frederick. And what you're seeing there is afternoon traffic on Frederick Road. This is not uncommon for traffic to be backed up from North Rolling Road, South Rolling Road, and exiting Maple Avenue or trying to get across to Dutton Avenue quite often requires a right-hand turn to make a left-hand turn to get onto another road. All right, do you have that image?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's Maple at the bottom of the screen there. You can see how we, when there's heavy traffic, have to go over to Overhill Road. So you make a right to make a left. So this is fairly common. And in that video image that I shared, you can see a silver car that's going down the shoulder. That's not another lane. So when when people make a left onto Overhill Road, we've had accidents there. Now I've got something else here. We've got images of accidents. All right, this is an image of an accident that occurred in July of this year, and that was at the intersection. We also had okay.
Okay, I know we're probably getting, how much more, sir?
Okay, this is an image of an EMT checking out an infant that was a passenger in that July accident. So we've had some significant accidents on the road. So I guess I've said enough about traffic. The other thing is, in the past year, we've had one house constructed on Maple Avenue. That house has, all right, these are concrete trucks that are delivering concrete for that for the foundation of that house. This is our little Maple Avenue, and that's kind of the impact that they're going to have on the construction. This is just for one house. This is the lumber being delivered for that house. One house, not 19 houses, that's one house. So I guess basically what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of words out there about what is right as far as the law is concerned. but it doesn't necessarily apply when you're looking at a street like Maple Avenue, which is so narrow. And this is a picture of families. This was taken several years ago before the development was proposed. Families on the street. This is our street. This is how wide our street is. And they want to put 19 houses down at the end of it and increase the traffic by 40%. We have no sidewalks. The only place to traverse the street is on the street. I don't know whether they're
I think we have your piece. If you can wrap up your comments and you can.
Okay, I don't know whether they're, I don't know whether, you know, I can't judge as far as the law is concerned and the planning board is concerned. But I think most of them have not been on our street. And one comment about the planning board meeting that they had, we were participants, and my impression is, or was, that they were more interested in procedure than hearing what we had to say. My wife had difficulty getting started, and they ran her time through the technical difficulties so that she was cut way short. They weren't interested in hearing what she had to say. They were interested in the amount of time she talked. So I guess that's all I have to say, but yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, thank you very much, sir. We appreciate your comments and appreciate sharing the pictures with us.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Castro, yes, is there a question or comment?
I had a question, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go right ahead.
I'd like to ask Mr. Lafferty, if he's still available, whether or not this information that was just shown by the constituent was considered by the planning board as part of its review.
Mr. Benjamin, I don't recall if these specific photographs were shown, but there were a number of photographs that were presented to the planning board. I think some of those actually may be attached to Mr. McCann's submission to the council. And there was conversation or presentation about traffic, so perhaps some of these slides that Mr. Lehman just showed were part of that presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, Mr. Castro.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Our next speaker is Eileen Lehman. Ms. Lehman? Ms. Lehman?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Well, thank you very much. Chairman Jones and members of the council. My name is Eileen Lehman, and I live at 27 Maple Avenue, about halfway down our street. A provision in the master plan states that some very localized parts of the county may have seriously inadequate infrastructure, such as insufficient public sewer, that makes these sites unsuitable for additional density. And this is what I'd like to address today, is the sewer situation. We've been here for over 40 years, and I have yet for these deficiencies be corrected as it relates to the sewer line. The existing line is a terracotta pipe installed in 1930 and ends at our home, 27 Maple Avenue. The proposed development plan calls for extending the sewer line, connecting the 19 new homes on the Davis Farms property, and eventually connecting the 18 existing homes on Maple Avenue that are currently on septic. Consider the financial impact on existing residents who will be pressed to go from septic to sewer. These 18 families will incur estimated costs of $6,000 for installation, $4,000 for a grinder pump, plus electric to power the grinder pump. And this doesn't even include the connection fee of approximately $2,500 or the additional sewer tax incurred. We've been repeatedly told by the county that the sewer pipe will be lined, but that has not occurred. The last time it was scoped was in 2007, And I doubt it has miraculously improved since that time, especially considering that we had a 2.6 magnitude earthquake in Catonsville exactly 10 years ago that damaged our house. Despite spending hard-earned money to hire a plumber to clean out the sewer line between our house and the main sewer line, we still endured repeated backups of sludge into our basement sink and had to install check valves. This is not a sewer line at its prime. It's a huge concern for us, and we don't see how this antiquated sewer line could sufficiently handle the increased volume from connecting 37 additional homes. Please consider the financial impact this will have on residents here. Many of us, including myself, are retired and on fixed income. Many of us who have invested too much time and money repairing our homes from insufficient infrastructures. Surely the master plan is in place for situations just like ours. I thank you very much, and I hope you will consider this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Leeman. Ms. Belcastro, anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have two more speakers this evening. Our next speaker is Albert Cuniff.
Okay.
Hello.
Mr. Cuniff?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. Council members, I know it's unusual for a matter like this to reach your desks, but I think it's actually highly appropriate, and I urge you to consider the uniqueness of the issue. Lots of things look good or doable in the abstract, but when you get down to street level, pun intended, they don't fly. There's the letter of the master plan, but we also need to consider the spirit of the plan. Physicians take a Hippocratic oath whose essential meaning is, above all, do no harm. I believe it's fair to say the master plan must have a similar underlying intent, which would be, above all, leave no neighborhood worse off after development. If we're to believe this proposed development is not in conflict with the master plan, then we must believe the master plan thinks it's fine to increase housing and traffic density by almost 50% on a dead-end street with no sidewalks, no curbs, and which is only 15 feet wide at points. You'll see that in Mr. McCann's exhibits. I took a picture of 3 people who spanned their arms and they overlapped. They didn't even need to touch fingertips. They can span more than the width of the street. Our street is one where emergency utility and delivery vehicles currently can be blocked if the residents simply park in front of their own houses. You wouldn't believe the street unless you walk it. By the way, the administrative law judge used to live in Catonsville. That should not be overlooked. He's aware of the traffic and housing issue on this street and certainly on Rolling Road and on Frederick. If we're to believe this is not in conflict with the master plan, we need to ignore the fact that Maple Avenue will not be widened or improved following this development, which adds so much traffic and housing density. Other than a short span directly opposite the proposed development, Maple Avenue would remain only 15 feet wide at its narrowest points, with no sidewalks and no curbs. Not all undeveloped land is alike. There's not another road like Maple Ave in our area. In his ALJ testimony, the developer's traffic expert, who interestingly also formerly lived in Catonsville, couldn't name a comparable neighborhood street. Mr. Quirk will recognize when I mention nearby streets like Seminole, Dutton, Hilltop, Oakdale, that they're nothing like Maple Avenue. It's a dead-end street, narrow, no curbs, no sidewalks. It's not going to change. All this extra traffic that has been quoted, by the way, 200 vehicle trips per day, the traffic expert admitted that doesn't take into account the actual size of the houses. All these houses are bigger than most houses on our street. So the numbers he's quoting are hypothetical. They're not based on real. It also doesn't take into account the increased delivery traffic in our pandemic world. And it also, once again, you must remember, every single vehicle has to traverse the entire length of our road as it comes and goes. These houses are not interspersed along the way. There will be no school bus stop, despite what Mr. Alderman said. I checked with Baltimore County. Our street lacks adequate sight distance in their terms, and it's too narrow. Buses require more width. They also don't want to make the turns they'd have to make at the end of the street. They don't go up dead-end streets. They also don't like cul-de-sacs, and they wouldn't like these turns. So if we're to believe that this is okay with the spirit of the plan, we have to bend our minds around a lot of street-level reality, and that's all I ask of you. Look at the street, look at what we have, pay attention to the pictures and the facts we present, and leave no neighborhood worse off after development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Koenig. Thank you for your testimony. Ms. Belcastro, next speaker, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our last speaker this evening is Barbara Hopkins. Ms. Hopkins.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and council members. I am the executive director of NeighborSpace and a lawyer and landscape architect by training. To Mr. Alderman's point that no one mentioned a conflict with the master plan speaks to the weakness in our development review process, which is why we're here today. With due respect to the planning director, whose leadership and long public service I have always appreciated, the idea that all we do in evaluating a conflict is consult the transect maps seems perfunctory. It also poses real challenges to our conservation mission. Let me explain. Contrary to much testimony, the Davis Farm site does not abut the state park. Rather, to its south lies 11 acres of county land over which NeighborSpace has a deed restriction, requiring that we protect its conservation values forever. In 2017, our consultant wrote a management plan for the site, noting that a stream on the site, Sawmill Branch, had become severely eroded owing to steep terrain and nearby development. She also observed that the 19th century stone dam on the site was collapsing and posed a threat to the safety of public recreation. A year later, severe rains breached the dam, causing hazardous site conditions. DPW staff testified that they hadn't seen this damage in the development hearing. In a January 2019 meeting with the county that NeighborSpace organized along with Councilman Quirk, DEP staff acknowledged that future storms pose a threat to the site's historic artifacts. Indeed, the ALJ's opinion acknowledges these same threats, the impacts of which are abundantly evident on the Sawmill site. The ALJ's opinion also highlights high foot and bike traffic on the already busy Maple Avenue by people accessing the Sawmill site, and the development plan's failure to link the Davis Farms and Sawmill sites as the zoning regulations and the master plan require. Indeed, we asked both the county and the developer to do so in order to make the Sawmill site accessible to the public, but those requests remain unfulfilled. This project is in a sensitive area. For this reason, regardless of what the transect maps say, compliance with the master plan begs a few more questions. For its sites, strengthening resource conservation and protection as a primary goal, and requires also that we employ careful planning and thoughtful design as we develop and redevelop land in the county. Failing to consider the impacts of the project on the Sawmill site and opportunities for improving access to it is neither careful planning nor thoughtful design, and it certainly does nothing for the cause of strengthening resource protection or establishing good development review precedent. No responsible land trust would want to go to the trouble of protecting a site if a development project next door could receive approval with such a cursory review. The planning board erred in not looking beyond the transect maps for master plan conflicts, and the ALJ is correct that a site plan with fewer homes would be more consistent with the master plan. For these reasons, we ask the County Council to overrule the planning board. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Ms. Hopkins. We certainly appreciate your comments. And Ms. Belcastro, do we have another speaker?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Councilman Quirk.
Just very briefly, I know there is one more speaker, Monica Simonson, I think would like to speak, and if so, that would be good. But before she does, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Hopkins, I just wanted to thank you for your testimony. Being really right next to this property. Are you saying you reached out to the developer to try to work with them, and did you not receive any response at all? Or I just wanted to make sure I understood what you were saying clearly, but I do appreciate your testimony for sure.
Yes, we did reach out and we had a conversation with them. They were not inclined at the time that we spoke to them to alter their development plan. We kind of looked at a route. We met with the county. We looked at a similar route where we might along an existing easement create a path down to the sawmill site. But we were just never able to get to agreement on making that happen.
Okay, thank you again. I appreciate Neighbor Space, and we all know this street really well. I've probably walked it dozens and dozens of times. It is a very narrow street. We work really hard with the community for protecting open space with Neighbor Space. Did wonderful work. So I do appreciate your comments, Ms. Hopkins.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Councilman Quirk and Ms. Hopkins. Ms. Belcastro, next speaker, please.
I don't have a registry for her, but Monica Simone. I'm sorry, I apologize. I forgot her name. One moment and I'll call upon Miss Simone. Simonson, my apologies.
Can you hear me?
Miss Simonson?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I received the confirmation. So it might be user error on my part. I'm sorry.
No worries. I think you may have been confused. Well, you do have to register for the WebEx, and they probably thought registering for the WebEx registered you for as a speaker, but we have your information.
Well, you'd think by the stage 4 in the process, I would have had this down, but I really appreciate it. My name
We're
is
all still learning.
My name is Monica Simonson, as you said, and I live at 17 Maple Avenue, so it's about halfway down on the left-hand side. I especially appreciate that some of you are joining us instead of celebrating Hanukkah with your families. So I thank you. I know it's been a long day so far. I'll try to keep my remarks brief and to try not to be too redundant because I know you've heard from some of my other my neighbors. The residents of Maple Avenue really have tried to engage in the planning process and have been met with a lot of challenges. So I want to acknowledge that because it was brought up by Mr. Lafferty that we've been engaged and we've been offered opportunities to be engaged throughout. I want to sort of first say that we have, sort of a track record, a log of emails and phone calls that went unanswered from the project manager. We had some equity related challenges to accessing the virtual hearings. Certainly during the pandemic, which sort of spanned this entire process, we had challenges to gathering safely to plan and advocate. And then last, sort of the nail in the coffin was that the invitations for the ALJ hearing actually arrived after the hearing. And that was probably due to those long postal delays we all remember last year. But we really are looking for this to be sort of as our lawyer indicated, sort of a new process, and for you to be able to provide some checks and balances and help us ensure integrity around the process. So we really appreciate the opportunity to bring some evidence forward. As elected officials representing the entire county, we know you cannot be expected to understand the nuances of each neighborhood. As residents of this unique, quirky, dead-end street that we've been talking about, we are the ones that have firsthand knowledge of the numerous accidents that occur at the entrance of our street. We know the names of the kids whose bikes have been hit by their bike cars while trying to cross Frederick Road to get to the nearby pool. We're the ones that all yell car up and down the street when a car is coming down because there's no sidewalks and the road's too narrow for 2 cars to pass safely or even 1 with walkers on the street. The developer's lawyer has frequently through this process liked to assert that the county agencies followed protocol and has characterized our community as being really resistant to change. But I really hope that you don't mistake the genuine concern of our neighbors for the safety of our community as hysteria. We aren't against all development, just like Mr. Zimmerman said, and we recognize that there is a privately owned property that will eventually house a few new homes and neighbors, but rather we're asking you to review this specific case and affirm that the master plan matters. The ALJ didn't deny the development plan solely on matters related to the master plan conflict. There were many issues that became significant in the aggregate, as Judge Mayhew stated, but a lot of these concerns really circle back to those provisions that Ms. Katz identified. One that's on page 4 is that many existing stable residential neighborhoods should not be disturbed for additional development. Another one on page 46 is that public infrastructure is important to determining the timing, location, and intensity of development. So it's not the development's bad for the sake of being bad, but in this particular case, the master plan, we assert that there is a conflict with the master plan. We've also been told, Mr. Alderman has contested that the residents of Maple Avenue have provided nothing but speculation and unsupported concern about our children's safety. But I would argue that it is their team that continues to make unsubstantiated assertions. For example, just as has been brought up before, the team at Century Engineering has stated that a new loop road would eliminate safety issues by providing a safe turnaround on a former dead-end street. It's really important to note and to give heed to what Mr. Cuniff said, that neither the developer or the Duke Century Engineering has the authority to conduct a BCPS bus route feasibility study, or apparently the forethought to consider that the added safety concerns of multiple daily trips of a large school bus traversing the length of the narrow street without sidewalks actually makes it less safe for those of us that already live here. So even if a bus was, if a bus was to somehow make a turn onto Maple Avenue without blocking traffic on Frederick Road and have to, dodge mailboxes and people and cars parked on the street to get all the way down to the bus loop and turn around, our kids are still at risk because they're walking down that street with the added traffic. Again, I'm trying to be a little not redundant. I think what I'll do is I'll leave it there. As Ms. Catt said, we'd really like to welcome you to visit our street for yourself. In fact, we're going to be sending each of you an invitation to a block party we're having this weekend. We're hosting a celebration of the holidays, and we hope you stop by. We trust that when you walk down Maple Avenue, you'll see what we mean. You'll understand that the master plan matters and that the safety of the current residents and this stable community matters. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Monica. We appreciate your comments. And I thought that there may have been one other person that had a quick comment. If Ms. Del Castro, do you see a BH?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair.
You can have 30 seconds.
Unfortunately, are they on by phone or?
I don't think so.
I'm not able to mute or unmute them.
Mr. Chairman, are you speaking about Bill Holland, BH? If so, I think he's the attorney. I think for the developer. I think.
I thought, okay, it could very well be. I thought there was another BH.
Barbara Hopkins?
Hey, we got a lot of BHs here. Not Barbara Hopkins.
I have 3 BHs. One is on, attendee is on as BH.
Yes.
I don't know how this person is on, but they're unable to mute them or unmute them. I can select their name, but I can't do anything else.
Okay, well, we can't do any more. Mr. or Mrs. BH, we're sorry. You can always send your testimony.
The only other thing that I could do, Mr. Chair, is make them a panelist. I don't know if that would work.
I think that I just got a message that it was Mr. Bill Holland.
Okay. Mr. Holland?
Yes, hi, are you there?
Yes, we are.
Yes, you have a good 30 seconds.
Thank you very, very much for your time. I am the developer here. We are the fee developer for the family who owns the land. The land was previously owned by some older ladies who lived their entire life, tax-paying citizens on the land. Their niece took care of them for most of their life, so they could live on the land and live their time out there, and they wanted to give the land to this young lady to develop the land, which we're doing on a fee basis. We have tried consistently to follow every recommendation in the code. We have not pushed the envelope. We hired a top-notch engineering firm. We came to planning and zoning. We discussed every bit of the zoning. When there was any change requested, we followed every rule in this situation. There was no pushing the envelope. There was no trying to bend anything. We got it done all by right. when we went through and there was no discussion in regard to the master plan, we had that conversation with planning and zoning, and they told us that they didn't find any conflict. So we're several $100,000 into this project on the land that these people have owned for years in the county. And now at the last minute, we have the planning and zoning, we have the overlay issue with the general development plan. In regard to being contacted in regard to Salt Mill Creek and access there, at the initial meeting, I did have a conversation with someone in regard to that. They had never gotten back to me. I'm readily accessible and easily accessible to that, so that information is not correct. In regard to some of the pictures of the flooding, we're on the downstream end of all this, so all of it would come down onto our property. So when we had the stormwater management issues, and that was brought up by planning and zoning staff, and they went through that thoroughly, we addressed everything we were asked to address. And so I'm just, there's a situation where we've gone through felt like we've jumped through every hoop that we've been asked to jump through in this. And we've done it all in good faith, hoping that the county would follow all the rules that we've set out to have. And I think that people who are accusing Mr. Lafferty of ignoring the general development plan here, that's not the case, because we've had that discussion in other cases, and he's clearly said, you know, that's the overriding governing thing here. So I would ask that you look at this as a situation where you've got a landowner here who has gone through everything you possibly ask. Over 3 years, we've been delayed because of the administrative law judge's decision to send it in the wrong direction. So it's been a long process, and we've jumped through every hoop, we feel, and we're trying to do our best to put a good development together for the community. In regard to the road, we put a loop in at the end at the request of the traffic people, because that way school buses can come back there and make the loop. Delivery trucks can come and make the loop, and they don't have to turn around in the middle of that road anymore. So we've done some good things there. We've increased open space in the community as been asked by the planning and zoning. So we really appreciate your consideration of what we feel is a great development for the community. And we appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Well, we thank you, and we thank all the callers, and I just want to, you know, a lot of people may be looking here, and I know we gave a lot of people more than the 3 minutes time than we normally would, but I think given these circumstances, I wanted to make every effort to make sure that everyone had an opportunity to express themselves forward, and give everybody an opportunity to put their best foot forward in terms of presenting their position. So we certainly appreciate all the comments. I know it's a very tough decision, but trust me, each and every one of the council members are going to take it all in advisement and contemplate and work hard to try to come up with the best solution. And before I wrap up, I'm just going to wish everybody a happy Hanukkah. And since this is Councilman Quirk's last word, his district, I'm gonna give it to you, Councilman Quirk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank everybody who testified tonight. I mean, there was a lot of really helpful, really detailed information. I just appreciate the time everybody's taken, and really respect everybody's thoughts and opinions. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and for my colleagues. Look forward to talking to all of you between now and the vote, and definitely very much interested in all of your thoughts and opinions on this as well. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman Quirk. I know Councilman Quirk had the last word, but any other comments or questions from the members? All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a safe week, and happy Hanukkah again.